Yeah, well, I think it is much better. I think it's 70% effective, It's,
Good morning.
but don't,
I'm Frank Messina, and I'd
Oh,
like to
there's
welcome
Frank.
you to the
Okay.
November 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. We have a couple of announcements to make before we start the meeting formally. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Seeing none, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted in person via remote participation in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and shall afford adequate alternate means of public access via Microsoft Teams by calling the phone number 508-945-4410, conference ID 463-062-883 hashtag, or by joining the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link posted in the agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real in-time access and will post a record of the meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue, hearing, or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. We have 7 members present, including the 2 alternates, and 2 of our members are participating remotely, Ben Solozinski and Vice Chair Bob Lear. As a result, we will take all discussion items and by roll call. So having said that, I'll proceed with a roll call. Bob Lear.
Here.
Steve Burlingame.
Here.
Ben Solozinski.
here,
Stephanie Hamilton.
Here.
Jane Moffett.
Here.
Don Aikman.
Here.
Sandy Porter.
Here.
And Jane Tennyson.
Here.
Thank you. So we have a full quorum of the members, 7 members. So the 2 alternates, Sandy and Janet, will participate, but will not be voting in today's meeting. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the minutes, or are the minutes. We have the minutes of October 19, 2021. I think everybody's had adequate time to review them.
Could I make a motion that we accept the minutes?
I have a couple of corrections, but yeah, make a motion.
I made the motion.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, I have a couple of corrections before we vote. Under Christina, under archaeological survey, ask Mr. Burlingame to contact the person, Craig Cordier, that would be assisting in creating the Form Es. Okay? Thank you. The other item, which is the next one up, update of the townwide archaeological survey. Chairman Messina had not been updated and need to be updated. And I discussed the concept of requesting CPA or other funding sources from Mass Historical Commission. Any other corrections, deletions? Okay, so we have a motion to accept the minutes as modified. Okay, we'll now have a roll call on the minutes. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Steve?
yes,
Ben?
yes,
Steph?
Yes.
Jane?
I can't vote.
Don?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Okay, we only have one item, a hearing on our agenda today, and then we have a number of old business items to discuss, so we should be able to dispense with this pretty quickly. The first item to be heard is application 21024, to be heard in accordance with Chapter 158 demolition delay bylaw, partial demolition of 146 Shore Road, and I believe Mr. Litchfield is here. We did have a site visit yesterday, and hopefully the other members who couldn't make the actual site visits got a chance to visit this rather unique and historic property. Mr. Litchfield, if I may, just one question. I don't believe there's an issue relative to historical significance of the property, and if there is none, we can dispense with that element of the hearing, if that's okay with you?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, for the record, we do have a Form B. This home was provided a preservation award in the past. Former residents are built by Mr. Joseph Lincoln. So having said that, if there's no other discussion, I think we have a consensus, if I see heads waving in the right way, to dispense with the first section relative to its historic significance.
I would move that the Chatham Historical Commission. I would move.
Now, make
that
it
the
when it's
Chatham
green.
Historical Commission-
Let it go. Just press it, and it's green. There you go. There you go.
Okay, one more time. I move that the Chatham Historical Commission finds that the building located at 146 Shore Road is historically significant because it is whole or in part 75 years old or more and is listed on or within an area listed on the National or State Register of Historic Places, or is the subject of a pending application for such listing. I could skip
Yeah.
that portion of it. The commission finds that it is associated with one or more historical persons or events, or within the cultural, economic, social, and political history of the town or commonwealth, and it possesses architectural value of significance in terms of period, style, method of construction, or association with a historically prominent architect or builder, either by itself or in conjunction with a group of other buildings or structures.
Okay, we have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Jane. Any other discussion? Good. Mr. Lear?
Excellent job, Steve. I vote yes.
That was a yes, Bob?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes,
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the owners of this property, Ken and Tamara Basil. Tamara is with us electronically, along with their architect, Gregory Chupp. We appreciate your having come out, those of you who were able to the site visit yesterday. And in regard to the vote which you just took to designate correctly this property as historic, it's one of the few that meets all three criteria. It is associated with a person important to Chatham's history. It is certainly historic in and of itself, and as you know, it's a prime example of a shingle-style structure on Shore Road. Ken and Tamara have owned the property in excess of 3 decades, and as indicated in your prior remarks, had already received an historic preservation award, and they want to make some minimal changes at the rear, not to the structure itself, but add an open porch. Their architect, Mr. Chupp, is here and can comment on it, but the new construction, as you know from what's been filed with you and from the site visit, is an open porch attached to the rear with a balcony above. There is necessarily, whenever you add something to a structure, there is some amount of demolition involved from a technical point of view. The Basils and their neighbors understand that the legal ad requires the use of the word demolition, but it was troubling to them as it was to everybody else, but there's no demolition in the true sense involved. All that is proposed is the minimal demolition to allow connection of the balcony and porch. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, whether you want me to go into any great length. It's a fairly simple process, and again, Mr. Chupp can comment or respond to any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. I think he's indicated it fairly straightforward. I hope everybody got a chance to view the property and get a chance to look out at the ocean. Beautiful property and very well done. So Does any member specifically have any comments or question on the application? It's pretty straightforward, as Ms. Litchfield indicated. I would just note, from my perspective, I think the changes are consistent with the other balcony that's on the property, and it does blend in. And most of all, from an impact relative to historic streetscape, it is in the rear of the property, and I think it does not change the character of the house. That's my opinion. Jane, you concur?
I agree. I think it would be actually a nice addition to it and would not diminish the historic value of the home. It's a beautiful place. I'm sure they'll do it according to the rules.
Sandy?
I agree. Having seen the.
Questions?
None at all.
Okay. Don?
I think it looks fine.
Great. Steve?
My only question is why it's before us and not subject to administrative review. It seems to be so
Well,
straightforward that it need not be, to me, it need not be the subject of a hearing.
Well, that's something, could have that discussion, but very simply, we haven't yet expanded the administrative review process other than beyond simple maintenance and minor changes. This is not maintenance, and it is really not a minor change, even though we think it's a good application. That's the constraints of the administrative review. Sorry to be off to the side, Mr. Litchfield, but that, we can have that discussion. We'd like to expand it at some time, but that's for another meeting. Steph?
I think it looks great.
Jane?
I agree too, and I have a short story. My grandfather photographed Joseph Lincoln on his front lawn, in front of their house, with his little white dog. And the section is in the Atwood House Museum. So obviously it was before he died in 1944, but it's there, and I'm very proud of it.
Thank you.
I like what they're planning to do.
Okay. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, any member of the public wish to speak for or against the application? None? Steve?
I would move that the Chatham Historical Commission also find that the proposed work to be done will not materially diminish the historic significance of the structure, and therefore the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
I'll second. Steph Hamilton.
Okay, second by Steph. Second by Steph. Roll call. Bob?
It'll always be the beach house to me, but yes, I vote for it, no problem.
Steve?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes,
Steph?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes,
Don?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you very
And
much.
Thank you very much. I see we have the architect, and is that the owner? And
Yes, Mrs. Basil is on that screen in the middle and just waved to you.
well, thank you very much. We appreciate your taking care of such a beautiful part of Chatham. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you'll qualify
Thank
for a
you.
second preservation award. I think you already have it once, so I don't know if we can give it to you twice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now. Okay, that was short and sweet. We have a number of items under the agenda on old business, but we have one new business item, which we probably should dispose of first. Let me find it. The commission received a piece of correspondence. Michelle, was this addressed to the commission?
It was sent to Katie Donovan, our director, and the sender asked that she forward it on to your
Commission.
commission and the Historic Business District Commission.
Okay, well, let me just give the public a little background here. This is a piece of correspondence from Mr. Dan Desmond, 376 Main Street, and the subject is the Eldridge Garage property, specifically the garage, which is still on the property, and a donation related to that property. I just want to preface the comments to the members of the commission so we do know and everybody's on the same wavelength. This property is in the Historic Business District under the domain of the HBDC. The Historical Commission merely, not merely, but performs an advisory role in consultation. And we've been lucky that Dan Silver, the chairman of the HBDC, has in the past reached out to us and asked for our opinion. So I assume this has also gone to the HBDC, which is the primary decision maker here, including the town. So I guess I probably should read it, okay, for the public. I'll do it quickly. I'll paraphrase some things. Mr. Desmond is writing on behalf of himself and a group of 6 neighbors across the street from the property, and they've been following closely the development plans of the Eldridge Garage. And they are a little bit of concern as relative to the town's current proposed changes to adapt or modify the existing garage to utilize as a bathroom and a some kind of a office area at the garage to facilitate the parking. And bottom line is they're unhappy with the proposed design, and they would propose that something different be designed and put on that property. The elephant in the room here is they're proposing potentially a donation of $1.4, $1.8 million. But from my opinion, you know, what they would like to do is demolish the existing historic building, if you will, and then replace it with another design of similar gas stations that existed in town. I would just preface this before we get into discussion. This historical commission has already determined that the existing garage building was historically significant. So that's where we are. Having said that, we'll go around the room if there are any comments or concerns. I don't believe, well, let's have a discussion first before we respond to this. Go around the table. Jane, you have any comments?
I have one question and one comment. Is it legal for us to accept a donation?
Oh, sure.
It is.
Not us, it'd be the town. yeah.
Well, right, I mean,
Yeah.
seems to me this came up once before about
Oh, you
another
could-
project, but it's okay. I like the idea, actually.
And you know, it's the same thing like when you do your income taxes, you always put an extra $1,000 into the government, you know, just, yeah. They'll accept it.
Yeah, right. I'm in favor of anything that's historic, and I like his idea. I just wasn't sure it was legal.
Sure of the what?
I wasn't sure it was legal.
Yeah, well, the donation is legal, whether or
The
not.
donation is
You want
legal.
to allow the demolition of the historic building.
No, I don't want that.
Okay.
No, we visited it.
This is something, in my opinion, this is something for the HBC and the town to negotiate.
Right, but didn't we visit it jointly?
Yes, we did.
And we decided that it should stay.
Yes, that's correct.
And I like his idea of restoring it
Well,
to
he
its
doesn't want to
original.
restore it, Jane. He wants to replace it.
No, he wants to replace, well, he wants it to look like an old-fashioned gas station.
Doesn't want this.
Yes, but he wants to demolish the existing one and replace it with something different.
So you're losing historic material.
Oh, I didn't read it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for
Steph?
clarifying.
Yes, I have a question. He talks about plans that they've seen they want to change. What plans?
Well, it never has been, it never has been presented to us, because technically we're not part of the decision-making process. But I do know personally, when Katie Donovan, who was the liaison to the Eldridge Garage Parking Committee, which I was a member of for the Historical Commission, they did present to the selectmen a concept of a plan. There is a plan for the redevelopment of the Eldridge Garage property and the building. You can see it if you go online, but we were not provided those plans. I lost Michelle.
I think she just ran up to make a copy. She'll be right back.
Okay, could you just take a note, ask her if we could, if Michelle could get a copy of those plans and share it with the commission? Okay. Steve?
I do have some concerns, but mostly from what was presented, which I have seen, and as you have, that this property was configured at great cost to the town because the garage was there, located where it is. was determined to be significant, and it was the tail that wagged the dog pretty much because of its location. The plan that I have seen destroys, in my mind, the appearance of what it was that we voted to save. And it seems to me, why should we go through all that configuration change because of this building is going to be changed so much that we're not going to recognize it at all as to what it was. It's going to be a few bathroom stalls and a place for the little vehicle that runs up and down Main Street with users of the parking lot. In my estimation, it's almost better either to reconsider the whether or not the garage remains, in which case you could redesign the parking lot better because you're not stuck with setbacks and things of that nature. And if it's not going to look like what it was, why go through the expense and the constraints of saving it? If we need a bathroom, put it where it should go, where it's easiest to go, build it in such a way that it's appropriate, traditional perhaps, but at the same time, I think by building what's been proposed, just to me, destroys the historic significance. It would need a plaque that said, this building used to be a garage.
Right.
Because it doesn't look anything more than a bathroom or a bus depot or whatever. If it was up to me and I was part of a committee or commission or review party, looking at what's proposed to be done, I think I'd be inclined to say, it was a nice effort, but if it's going to be like this, let's just forget it, move on, and it's just like the stable that was torn down. We haven't missed it. And I think the fact that, I'd rather put up a picture of Eldridge's garage on a pole there than to try to remake it into something that has no presence at all of being an old gas station.
Okay, I think
These guys have a point, I think.
I think you made some very good points there, because part of the discussion, if I may, part of the discussion when we voted to deem it historically significant and for it to be saved, and the efforts as part of the Eldridge Garage Parking Committee was that we wanted it to look like that way it looked in 1930 and not change it. And I agree with you. I think what I'd like, let me finish the comments, but I think we should respond to this in some way. But let me just go on. Don?
I would be totally opposed to any demolition of this building. I think the proposal to move it forward was fine, but it would keep it as it looks today for the most part. So I would be opposed to demolition.
Okay, very good. Sandy?
I'm in agreement. We went to the,
Sandy, can you take your mask and lower it a bit, because we really can't hear you.
excuse me.
Speak into the microphone. Close. Get your mouth. There you go, baby. Thank you.
We took the time and made the effort, and we decided we wanted to save it. And I'm opposed to demolishing it. There has to be a way to make it work for everybody.
Okay. Janet?
Since I'm new and was not involved in the historical designation process, I think I need to defer to you all that were involved. I mean, obviously, this proposal is going to totally change. It's going to bear no resemblance to what we approved as an historic building to value in Chatham. So that would be my takeaway for now.
All right, well, thank you very much. What I'd like to propose, I really strongly agree with,
What about Bob Lear?
And Ben?
Frank, I have my hand
oh,
up.
I'm sorry about that, Ben. Out of
Me
sight,
too,
out of
Frank.
mind.
All right, listen, here's my proposal. I think that they should leave the building where it is. And I think that if they did an underground parking garage, put a park on top of it,
I agree.
it would be unbelievably great. So if you're gonna spend a couple $1,000,000, why don't you do it right? Park on top, underground garage, and save the building.
Thank you, Ben. Are you offering a $10 million donation to build an underground parking garage? No, I didn't think so.
I have 5 kids and 10 grandchildren. If you want to get in line, you may get something.
All right.
Frank, I have a
Bob?
comment too, if you're ready. I kind of like Ben's idea because it might solve the drainage problem.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting off topic.
No, we're not. I agree. My wife was on the planning committee, as was Mr. Nicastro and you. And I therefore have seen the plans, although we had to ask for them. And I have the same objections as the rest of the commission.
Very good. All right, we seem to be forming a consensus here, and I see that our select person, Mr. Nicastro, has joined us. Dean, I think what you're hearing here, a consensus in the commission that we really, and again, this is just opinion, that the commission is really not in favor of demolishing the garage, which we were, when we declared it historically significant, primarily, and secondary, we don't agree, we're not enamored of the plans which were presented to the town, to the select board. But again, we're strictly advisory, and I guess thirdly, in terms of the current letter and offer of the Mr. Desmond and his neighbors, it's very generous. It would be nice to see them still contribute something to the development of the Elridge Garage, but we'd like it to be more in terms of historic preservation. So I think what we'll do is I'll generate a draft letter. I'll send it around to the other members of the commission and, get your opinion on it, and then we'll forward it back to the powers to be. Mr. DeCastro?
And we'll get the plans?
Yeah, excuse me, Dean. Yes, I asked Michelle through Christina to provide the plans back to the commission. Thank you. Yeah, Dean, do you want to add anything to our discussion?
Sure. I'm sorry I joined late. I wasn't sure when you were going to get to this particular item because it is of interest to me, having served on that committee, as was mentioned. Here's what I know. We had a presentation recently by the engineering firm that the town manager has engaged. And those are the plans I think you're referring to. They're not terribly extensive. And I also participated in a smaller session with the same engineer. I have not had any communication with the prospective donor. But I know there was some prior communication with that individual. We certainly, as a board, and I in particular, made very clear to the engineer that our preference is to preserve as much of that building as you possibly can. Apparently, there's a lot of it that is pretty shaky, and there needs to be some replacement of some boards, I guess, and the idea of moving it, I think, doesn't bother me, as was mentioned also, because it may help with the parking flow, the traffic flow in and out. I don't know. One member objected to that. One select person objected to that. But so we've asked them to come back, and I'm certainly less interested in having a replica than I am in having the original preserved. And I think that's the sentiment of the select board. I know you're dealing with this because you received a letter from one of the neighbors, and that particular neighbor has been very, very supportive of the plan. And I think it's really just trying to facilitate the the completion of this project that we all worked so hard on. And it's not, it's my understanding that there is room for some middle ground between what the town wants to do and the interests of the donor, who apparently has an interest in historic gas stations. It seems to me that we could manage to preserve this building, which is what you want to do and the HBDC wanted to do, in a way that meets all our concerns and perhaps would benefit from a substantial donation from the potential donor. I think that's not off the table, but I'm saying that speculatively because I haven't personally been in any direct communication with that particular individual. And so I think you're moving in the right direction in terms of what the select board would like to see, and I would encourage you to share whatever communication you're going to send to Mr. Desmond, send a copy to the select board as well. So those are my comments.
Frank?
Thank you very much, Dean. I think that's the action that we'll take, is I'll prepare a draft in response to this, to Mr. Desmond, as well as to the select board and the HBDC, all the other parties involved. Okay, like to move on if we can?
Frank?
Yes.
No, can I just make one more comment here? Before you look at my proposal as pie in the sky, those of you who have been to Europe, to small towns, know that they do preserve central portions of the town, including monuments and fountains and so on and so forth, and have underground parking garages. And I don't know if this is cost prohibitive or not, but certainly it would be something in the right direction where you could have your cake and eat it too. So I just didn't want to see this poo-pooed, but possibly put in as a, quotes, alternative. Thanks.
Ben, I didn't mean to make light of your suggestion. Oh, maybe I did, sorry.
No,
This is not the Trevi Fountain, and I agree with you. I mean, I as Dean's indicated, we both served on the Eldridge Garage Committee, you know, and after the town bought it, you know, it was not an easy lift just to get the town to buy the property, and there's a lot of discussion. So I don't, in my opinion, strictly Frank Messina, I don't think the town would want to go look at putting another few more $1 million into that property. I mean, it's a parking garage in an area where they do have the land. So, but thank you very much.
well, we do need parking, so there you go. Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Frank.
Okay, all right. We have a number of old business items we need to walk through, some which are going to take more discussion than other. The first item under old business is the Preservation Awards. There's Michelle. We haven't received anything?
I've not received anything as yet. The deadline's a bit off.
Okay, so we have time, but, you know, I would like to ask the members of the commission, okay? Put on your thinking caps, and, you know, you've been around here a while, you know buildings which we have approved, and there's preservation done. If I went down Stage Harbor Road the other day, and I just saw one or two properties, even though Stage Harbor Road is such a nemesis to me, that, gee, they did a good job on it. And you know, so if you think about properties that you know that we have done, we have approved, you know, renovations or restorations of, and it would potentially be worthy, you know, think about it and do a little research, if you will, and let myself and or Michelle know, and we could reach out to the people individually to submit an application. Usually, it's November, but sometime late December, January, I, as chair of the Preservation Awards, will probably reach out again to some of the contractors, and I had one or two reach out to me and said they were interested, so we need to follow up. I mean, it doesn't just happen, okay? So I'd like to ask that. I believe Michelle helped me here. We do have a Preservation Awards Committee. meeting,
Yes, I believe we do. Is it the 17th?
the 17th? You're right.
It's in that week at some point. The
Yeah.
date skipped around a little bit.
Yeah, we do have another meeting of the Preservation Awards, Sandy, myself. So we will have another meeting, and I'll let the members know if anybody else would like just to attend, okay? That's it. Anything else on the awards?
Not,
Okay, good. The Historical Commission budget update, I guess we're going to get into that as we go down the list here when we talk about the third item on the agenda with PAL and grant applications. I'll discuss that. I've had informal discussions with Katie Donovan about my asking that she include money in her budget to facilitate ours, and I will have personal, I'm trying to schedule a meeting with her to go through that, okay? So that's something we are continuing to work on. Okay, Form Es. Steve, did you ever reach out to Craig?
Finally, I have something to report. Finally, I do have, thank you. Finally, I do have something to report regarding the Form Es. I've had a discussion with Craig Schroeder. The Form Es are fairly complex. You know, in a way they're simple, but in a way they're complex and require quite a bit of legwork. Not only do we have to identify the first buried and the last buried in each cemetery, and they have to be photographed, and they have to GPS designation in terms of its location and things of that nature. So in speaking with Craig, who was very familiar with these, and we came up with a very, very quick and dirty budget, assuming that there were 14 cemeteries, and some of them are substantial, as you know, the Union Cemetery and some others that are considerable in size, but we have pretty good records with those. And we have some tiny ones, too. The Small Box Cemetery is one, the Maritime Cemetery behind the Coast Guard Station only has one headstone there, and I don't know how many other burials, but there's just this one headstone. Certainly Dr. Lord's grave, if we call it a cemetery, that's singular, with just his body being interred, from what I understand, et cetera. But assuming, and I was guessing, that there were approximately 14 cemeteries, including big and small. That being the case, Craig suggested for a working number, he figured that it would take about 3 days for each cemetery, his physical examination of the cemetery, the write-up of what needs to be done, and some other miscellaneous things. If we multiply the 3 days times the 14 cemeteries, and then his daily rate is approximately $400, that adds up to $16,800. I think that may be on the high side, because some of these cemeteries are in fact so small. But if we use that $16,800 as a guideline, as a starting point, then we know we know going forward what we're looking at to accomplish this. But I think I have no doubt that he's most capable of doing it. He's certainly willing to do it, anxious to do it, enthusiastic about it. I think he has all the credentials that we're looking for. I think we've all had some interaction with Craig through his earlier actions in town, and through his presentations of what he has done. So I think it makes sense to go forward with Craig at this point. And I think we just need to make an assurance, assume an insurance of ourselves that we will be backing the project, probably looking at a CPA application for that purpose. But I think that's about what we can do at this point.
Good. Just members of the public, what we're talking about here, Form Es, you may be familiar, and the members of the commission, we have our infamous Form B, which is done for a structure, a home in the property. When I say we, this is a determination from Mass Historic Commission for how to categorize and provide a history of historic elements, properties, and buildings, and of course, cemeteries. When we did the initial archaeological survey, and we're going to be talking more about that in the next item, the one thing we didn't do when we did the survey in 2009 is cemeteries. We just had a limited amount of funding from CPA, and we said, well, that's a future date. So 2009, it's a while ago, and we're talking about updating report. So I think this is consistent. What I'd like you to ask you to do is to, Craig's very busy now, I know that, because I'm working with him, with PAL on the Nickerson dig, which we'll talk about. But if you could then reach out, and I'm going to ask for consensus now, for him to provide, a formal scope of work and proposal. Because, and then we as a commission could determine, we can't go to CPA with 10 different applications. Nothing's going to get approved. Who's our CPA rep? Oh, sorry, I'm looking this way.
And I just would like to tell you that it's been suggested that a large portion of our money goes to affordable housing.
I know, we'll talk about that separately. We all have a vote, but, so anyway, we're not talking big bucks here. But having said that, Steve, if we have a consensus, looking for head shaking in the right way, that, we'll proceed with a proposal. Whether we submit it now or at some future date, at least we have a proposal, and we can deal with it, all right? All right, so that's the first item. Any other questions? Yes, Don?
I've been advised that the CPA funds can be used for preservation, but not to create something. So this would have to be under the administrative budget of CPA, not on the historic preservation budget.
Well, I don't disagree with the CPC or their current way they're interpreting historic preservation, and they haven't in the past, and I don't want to get into a debate with you or the member. Is your wife a member of the CPC? Oh, son of a gun. Okay, but I disagree strongly with that. That's an abomination of what the money was supposed to be used for. And
You may disagree with it, but those are the rules.
I know that, but, members of the CPC come and go, okay? So this is not a town policy. It's a CPC decision, so it could change. Having said that, because Frank doesn't give up that easy, we're going to move off Form Es and move on to the next items on the agenda, which is the townwide.
Frank, before we leave that, can I make one comment? The Cemetery Commission apparently has pretty decent records of the current active larger cemeteries, but very little, if any, other than what's in George Goodspeed's head regarding the other cemeteries, the tiny ones, the small ones, the inactive cemeteries. This would be an excellent opportunity for the town to accumulate some of that information, even their location, specifically. Right now, it's kind of behind the third house, leading down to the beach. That doesn't work. And I think that this is an opportunity really to be more specific. Apparently, those people buried in the small cemeteries, their burials being as important as those, to me, that are interred in grander locations. That's all I have to say.
Steve, I strongly agree with you, and I think I have a cohort here in arguing with the CPC. But, yeah, let's proceed. The next 2 or 3 items kind of tie together, and that's the discussion with that we have been talking about for a number of years now, since the archaeological dig was completed, both at the Nickerson Family Association to provide what we feel a very good likelihood is the homestead of the William and Ann Nickerson homestead back in 16, whatever the hell that date was. And in addition to that, the archaeological survey, this commission, Janet, just for your information, This commission, with the use of CPC funds, completed a archaeological reconnaissance survey of the town of Chatham in the public. This exists and is available in redacted form to the members of the public. It looks like a top-secret report that they don't want you to read, but it's redacted because they don't want to give you the exact location of the archaeological location of various things in the town, so people don't go around digging up Indian heads and shells. So this report was done in 2009, and since that time, we have completed 3 or 4 major archaeological surveys in dig, specifically the Nickerson Family Association dig, as I indicated. The Atwood House was also, did an archaeological dig. And then there are 2 or 3 digs which were accomplished in surveys as a result of the town of Chatham's wastewater treatment plant. Every time the town was digging up streets and property to put in pipes and buildings for the sewer system, it was required by law to do an archaeological survey. And the town used our report to whether or not there is something archaeologically sensitive. And then, so anyway, it's a useful document, and it's been recommended to me that we update the report. What does that mean, update? We're not going to do another survey of the whole town. We're going to do a minimal survey of the town and incorporate the findings of the current dig in this archaeological report, so it exists for future generations. So that's the first item on the agenda, well, from my perspective. And I have requested from PAL, which you have in your packet, or was sent to you, 3 proposals. Get down to the nitty-gritty now. So you have 3 proposals, and it's getting a little bit confusing, but I'll try to walk us through it. And I'm in the process of working with PAL and the Katie Donovan, our Director of Community Development, to see if it's worthwhile to proceed with these grants. The first one, from my perspective, is a proposal to update the townwide survey, as I discussed. That comes out to about $12.8 thousand, and I would like to propose that be put aside a second, because on a primary basis, what I'd like to propose is that we proceed very quickly and try to get in the current CPA, what do you call the, what do we call it? You know, the round of applications. And that would be the first one was the potential determine the eligibility of the William and Ann Nickerson homestead, whether or not it is eligible as a National Register site. Okay, so there's a proposal from that, from PAL, and that's $6,000. There's a lot of work involved. I'm not going to go through all of the individual items, but you could read it at your leisure. So that would be the first thing I would propose we ask the CPA to fund, this determination of eligibility. Notwithstanding Mr. Aikman's comments about the CPA being on a trash, as far as I'm concerned, against historic preservation, but hopefully we can appeal to their better angels, I think is the expression I'd like to use. So that's the first one. So that we would do the analysis and determine whether it is eligible. If in fact the Mass Historical Commission, this is going to take time, guys, it's not going to happen overnight, take years. If they determine it's eligible and they respond to us, just like we're doing with the South Chatham Village. I mean, we did a lot of work and we used CPC money, for that. And we're at the 2-yard line waiting for Mass Historic to make a determination that South Chatham Village is historically, is eligible for a National Register designation. So the same thing would happen. I would then propose a second CPA grant for the 12.4 for the nomination process, okay? The third element of my troika here would be the actual update of the the actual survey was a result of all these digs, and that came out to 12.8. Now, I'm not proposing, by the way, the assumption here is that we would not use town funds directly, because I'm sure we're not going to get any money from the town for this. That the only thing that we're going to do is get CPC money. And that's why I have a problem, Don, keep looking at you, sorry, that with the CPC, that, the CPA was created to avoid this conflict between, the town and town budgets and to do community preservation. So I'm making a speech now, I'm sorry. So that's the third element.
Right, Frank, I'm just quoting what is in the rules and regulations. It has to be a CPA vote, or CPC, the committee has to vote.
Absolutely, right. Right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pick on you, Don.
That's all right.
That's good. Thank you. You got big shoulders.
Also, it depends a lot on how many other applications come in.
I understand, but, there's multiple years. None of these things have to happen tomorrow. We understand, well, we can't do it this year, we'll do it next year, that kind of thing. But I'd like to get our oar in the water to begin the process on this. The other thing I'd like to comment on this whole process, which has consumed me for the past couple of months, is the fact that, as I told you in one of our last meetings, we also received, and I think it's in our agenda here, we also did receive information from Mass Historic Commission relative to a 2022 grant funding situation where you can apply for survey and planning funds. So I'm also, again, with Katie Donovan, in the process of preparing a grant request, okay? So what I would like to do is the town-wide archaeological survey, which doesn't have to be done right away, the update of that in consultation with PAL, Holly Herbster. The use of these Mass Historic funds is just perfect for the kind of survey we're doing with the study. So I would like for the third element, the 12,000, that we would apply for a grant. And now that I have a formal proposal from PAL, I could do that. So summarize here. Sorry, it's complicated, guys. One grant to CPC for 6.2 for something we'd like to do right away. The second application to CPC for 12.4 only when and if, sorry about that, public, only when and if we receive approval of the nomination. So we could apply for CPC and tell them we're going to do this in the future, so at least they have it on their radar. And if we do get an application, a formal information that we are eligible, then we would proceed. And then the third application would be not to CPC directly, but to Mass Historic for utilization of their survey funds. I'm going to stop talking for 2 minutes because I'm tired. Okay, any questions? Oh, come on, I could have made it that clear. Yes, Janet?
I have a question. Going through this process, does this make the property more historic than it already is? In other words, what's the advantage of going through all of this? More funding to?
Good question.
I don't know.
The advantage is, well, let me ask you another question. What's the advantage that we have in the Old Village, in the National Register site?
That we can keep it that way, right?
Thank you very much.
So
That's the first one.
This is it.
It does provide another level of review and protection, and it also, more importantly, it provides a recognition, not just, we all know that the Nickerson dig is interesting, and we're proud of it, but now what it says is that it's recognized at the National Register that this is a National Historic Site, and it's worthy of acknowledgement and protection. It's not a Civil War, battlefield, but to us people in Chatham, it's important, because this is where our town was developed.
Does the family their association put any funds in for this?
Second good question. Oh, you get 2 for 2 now. First of all, as far as the Nickerson dig is concerned and the listing of a National Register, it requires the approval of the owner. The owner is, Mr. Leary, you still with us? is the Chatham Conservation Foundation. They own the property, not the Nickerson family. The Nickerson family is adjacent to the property, but they don't own it. So it would require, if we proceed with a nomination, that the Conservation Foundation approves and allows us to go forward. But that's still, we don't need the Conservation Foundation approval to submit a nomination. In other words, we could ask, no, excuse me, I misspoke. We don't need their approval to submit a letter to Mass Historic and say, is this eligible? Reason for that is that the archaeological dig of the Nickerson homestead was done by CPC funds. Thank you very much. Okay? So there is, as far as I'm concerned, CPC doesn't have a leg to stand on here, but we'll argue with them when we get there.
That's preservation.
It didn't preserve anything. They dug a hole and they put it back. Okay.
So does the conservation...
They preserve the artifacts.
We're getting into the discussion. Janet, did I answer your
So,
question?
yeah, you did. So, in other words, then, does the Conservation Foundation, do they kick in money too for this, or they?
I'm not asking him to.
Oh, okay, good.
Mr. Lear, would you like to comment?
Yeah, we've had this discussion before, and I have not brought this to the board, but the discussion before was this is a historical effort. If you look at our mission statement, it does not include historical. And that doesn't mean we're going to oppose it, but
Understand.
asking us to kick in funds is a separate step.
Okay, understand. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the initial stages here. But, it's nice to have an idea, but it's nice to have a piece of paper behind that idea. So when people ask a question, what are you talking about? So I just felt it was worth my effort to begin the process. Man, did I talk that one out? Okay. So I think we've dealt with 4 or 5 of the items. I think we get into the easy part here. The next item, the issue of project oversight by individual members. Mr. Lear?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if I can impose upon you to take a shot at putting together some guidelines for that proposal. I think at the last 2 times we discussed it, specifically also by Mr. Burlingame, there was concern. I think there was a majority of us thought it was a good idea, we'd like to do something. I'm talking about the oversight of individual properties. But can you take a shot at putting together a draft of just some guidelines for that process?
Sure. Just to clarify, we're talking about properties that have come before the commission and a ruling has been made about what work could be done, should be done.
Right, and then we were going to assign a member of the commission to be a general walk-by, to verify, to continue as the work was proceeding, to provide some kind of another pair of eyes to take a look at the process.
I would be willing to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Burlingame, would you be willing to join me?
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful, we have 2 attorneys.
That's a yes.
Maybe if you're willing to live with that, that's fine, but okay, that's good. I think we can probably reach some kind of consensus as to what we let you look at, so.
Thank you very
Steve,
much.
I'll be in touch.
Great. I would just like to ask the 2 consiglieres here to keep it simple, okay?
Right, that's a that.
Are we being paid by the hour?
2 attorneys to keep it simple is not going to happen, but.
I know, but I figured I'd start here anyway. My son's an attorney, so I know this story. Okay, let's go. All right, thank you very much, guys. The next item on the agenda here is, we thought Mr. Briggs could possibly join us. Unfortunately, they can't. So I have an action now to provide to Mr. Briggs in writing what our issues are and for him to formally respond to it, okay? So what can I say? We'll just continue to talk about that. And we also potentially wanted to talk to Ms. Donovan relative to the next item is adherence to decisions and determinations in the process for fines, noncompliance. Ms. Donovan has informed me through Michelle that a memorandum has been sent to the council, and we're waiting for a response for formal determination relative to our authority and limits of our authority as it relates to adherence to determination and fines. Okay, the next item, demolition by neglect, and also the issue of the zoning bylaw. We're kind of waiting for Ally to return, and then we'll take it from there, unless you have something else to add, Steph.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to try to write something up before we get Ally back. One of the big questions I had written down was about finance. What would happen if someone didn't obey?
Right, exactly.
So it's exactly that.
Ties in. Thank you very much. Last but not least,
Frank, Jane, can
Yes.
I ask a question about demolition by neglect? I think most of you have probably driven by the corner store, and the house right next to the corner store at the Four Corners is slowly deteriorating. And I just watch it almost every day, and I wonder at what point is something going to happen, or
Well, that's-
what will happen?
that's what we're all about.
So there are no laws, Stephanie told me before the meeting, no laws to deal with this.
No.
So nobody can knock on the door or find out who the owner is, and, you know, the way that the house at Cockle Cove.
The only authority there is, and again, this is my understanding, is that if somebody is occupying the property,
I don't think so.
they're not. And if somebody tries to occupy it, there could be a determination that this house is unsafe to be occupied. And then the building inspector can come in and either close the house down or forbid, but other than that, no.
There's nobody that you can report it to, or,
No.
wow. You do know the house I'm talking about,
Yes, we do.
don't?
I do, anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, thank you.
I didn't know.
Last but not least, in terms of old business, is the issue of the South Chatham Village. And I've had a recent conversation with Mass Historic, and they assure me that the, excuse me, my ears are ringing. They assure me that the application is still being processed, and the next step would be the State Review Board presentation of the results of the review by Mass Historic of our application relative to the South Chatham Village being a National Registered District. So it proceeds slowly, but it's proceeding. Okay, any other questions on old business items, guys? None? Excuse me, Jane?
The Coast Guard house.
Oh, we're still awaiting for the town to finish its design and engineering, so nothing has happened yet. Okay, the only other item we have here, well, is the, we have two items here. One we need to do. One is the status of demolition delays, demolition delays. Michelle, do you have anything you can add to that?
No, it's a pretty short list these days, so that's good. Sorry, pretty short list, so no comments.
The only one I would comment, and it's on our chairman's report, is 68 Shell Drive. Mr. Jack Leone resubmitted plans to the planning board, which were approved, and then he has a meeting scheduled on November 18th with the ZBA of the revised plans. I had a peek at his revised plans, and I guess you can see them if you contact the town, Sarah Clark, and he's reduced the scale and scope of his new building. Our historic property is still there and will be hopefully used as a guest house, as well as the fact that he's now proposing to use the historic barn as a garage. So, you know, hope springs eternal. historic preservation is not for the faint of heart. Takes time. So that's where we are with that. Michelle, can you give us a little update on administrative review?
Yes, we had one request for administrative review recently that was approved by the reviewing members of the commission.
Michelle, could you get closer to the microphone, please?
We had one request for an administrative review recently that was reviewed by the members of the commission that were charged with going out to have a look. Simply, it's 158 Pleasant Street. They propose to add two very slim, long but slim skylights to the back of the house. There are already two on the roof at this time, and the reviewing members approved it as an administrative review.
Thank you. So this was a pretty straightforward application. I believe three of us looked at it. Don, Bob, and I took a walkthrough on the property and felt it was minor, and we felt it was applicable to the administrative review process as we currently authorize it. So at this particular point, I could use a motion to ratify the decision of the three members of the commission.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, we'll do a roll call unless there's any members of the public wish to speak to it. Nope. Bob?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Steph?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. I think this thing is working. This administrative review process is working. Steve, and just to expand a little bit more, I understand you see other ways but I think we've got to be careful, in my opinion, and I think this is a start. We've got our nose under the tent, and I think we can expand it, to be more inclusive. But, we want to put ourselves out of business here. Okay. All right, I think I did that. Where are we? Monomoy Theater property, they also went back to the planning board, and I think their subdivision was tentatively approved.
The subdivision was approved. The plans have not been endorsed yet.
Okay, and I think if you listen to the meeting on the planning board and other public statements, Mr. Clark has indicated when he completes this housing development on the top of the property, he then is going to move to the restoration of the Washington House and the theater to create a theater. And so hopefully we'll have a Monomoy Theater, obviously not the same Monomoy Theater, but some kind of a theatrical situation in town in the future, which would be great if we could restore those properties. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we talked it out.
I make a motion that we exit this lovely program.
Second?
Second by Jane. Any objections? Hearing none. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Steph?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. We now adjourn the meeting.